All right. Well, it's great to see you, Michelle. Welcome back.
Hey Dan, so we're recording remotely again, as you can tell.
hmm We are, and we've got some good, exciting content for everybody today. So, and if this one, we're talking about the mistake that everyone makes as it relates to your sleep. Like if you've ever woken up at 3 a.m. for no good reason, there is a reason, and we're going to
Yes.
talk
So,
about it.
so I mean, I was talking to you right before we hit the record button. Just sleep is just kind of different now. I don't really understand why I'm sleeping better. I hurt my shoulder since the last time I saw you, so I thought
No.
maybe it was like a pain thing. But when we're recording, we had a couple days of colds. As you know, we're living in Florida, so it doesn't change temperature that much. But when it does, it really can make a big difference with your sleep. So we decided to talk about that today.
Absolutely, and I want to dive deep into this. So definitely, so our listeners can stay tuned because really, the temperature that you fall asleep at and stay asleep at, that's something most of us are really getting wrong, like in our bedrooms.
Right. So, I think this started, we talked a couple of episodes about weighted blankets
hmm
and how weighted blankets may, be extremely helpful for like the part where it gives you almost some I don't know what the word that I'm looking for is, but there's some comfort around you, but they
Oh
tend
yeah,
to
it's
be
a
quite
sensory
hot.
thing. Yep.
Yeah, they tend to be quite hot. And they tend to be pretty big, not easy to travel with. So some people have gone into these, you probably have seen them on some of the websites about these weighted stuffed animals.
hmm
So it's a way to still have kind of that comfort and the weight without it all encompassing your entire body from a sensory perspective.
Yeah.
So temperature is pretty key because we talk about, the ambient temperature. And then there's things with your clothes can aggravate the temperature of your body.
hmm
And then your bed, the type of material that your bed is made of. And then again, your internal body temperature. So internal body temperature is very tied to things that you do before sleep. So if you tend to do a lot of, physical cleaning or labor, ahead of time, your body's actually heating up.
hmm
And we've talked before about how the important part about being able to get to sleep is your body is able to fall asleep when it's a little bit cooler.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an important thing that you can try on your own. So if you're having trouble at least like settling down, you want to somehow cool your body temperature core a little bit.
hmm
And that leads into where, one of the things you can do when you're tired but not sleepy is take that shower.
hmm
So the shower, you kind of warm yourself up, but as you can cool down a little bit naturally, instead of like shaking yourself dry and being under the heat lamp, let your body cool itself down naturally, and that'll help you fall asleep.
Absolutely. That decrease that, and that same thing for. I know we talked about this with exercise because it's kind of a mixed thing out there in the research literature, but generally speaking, for people whose body can recover faster, meaning return to baseline faster, they're the ones where that cool down is what is going to promote sleep a lot better than someone who takes a longer time.
Yeah. So if you're not doing a shower, another really nice way to cool your body temperature down is doing some breathing techniques. So slowing your breathing down, getting your parasympathetic system up. A real quick exercise is doing like the 5 seconds breathing in and 5 seconds breathing out, keeping your shoulders low so that you're not generating a lot of heat by using extra muscles when you're doing chest breathing. So that's another physical thing that you can do.
Mhm.
It also doesn't necessarily rev up all your muscles. So we can call it exercise, but it's just more of like a breath work type of
Mhm.
exercise. Okay, so that's like on the personal type of level. On the bed materials, again, if you're going to revamp your room and do bed materials, natural fibers do tend to be more breathable, and those can actually help regulate your body temperature a little bit better. So they tend to, if you're sweating, they'll tend to take the sweat away from your body and kind of cool it down. And then that being a little bit cooler will also cool you down.
Mhm.
Synthetic fibers that don't breathe very well, they tend to almost, again, encase you. And,
Right.
some of them even have plastics in them. And then the plastics, again, they don't let you breathe at all.
Mhm.
So, there's not, it's a personal thing on what people sleep in, everything from like absolutely nothing to, having like a zippered gown or something that you sleep
Right.
in.
Well, I mean, but this brings up a big part, when we talk about temperature, we can talk about like different things like ambient temperature, like what temperature you set your air conditioning system to be like in the room. But even within that, it's what kind of bed you're on top of, what your sheets are doing. And really, I think one of the messages I'm hearing you say is you want something that's very breathable. You want something to be able to allow moisture and heat to dissipate if needed.
So during your regular sleep, so stages 1 through 3, you control your own body temperature. And so that's very internally driven. When you're in REM sleep, which is stage 5, during REM, you actually become kind of like our snake and amphibian friends that you don't regulate your body temperature. And so it's really important that you're in a good spot so that your body can release that. So if you actually are a little too warm, you won't be able to be in REM for very long because a lot of physiologic functions don't work well when you're warm. So what do you think, Dan, if you look at some of the literature and maybe you have looked at this, but what is that magic temperature that's supposed to be optimal for sleep? I think I know for me, it was shocking when I read it.
I think I read it too, and I remember actually thinking like, "That's cold," because I wanna say it was like
Yes.
68 or something along those lines.
64.
Oh my god.
64 degrees.
Yeah, girl.
Um,
Freezing, like yeah.
yeah, we have, the discussion here in Florida. If you kept your room at 64, you're going to have 3 jobs because, when the ambient outside temperature is in the 90s and it cools down to like the high 80s for
Mhm.
a good portion of the year here,
Right.
it's not acceptable. But, when we wake up in Florida and it's in the 60s just because the temperature dropped at night,
Mhm.
that's really shocking to our system, but how great do you sleep with it?
Oh, it does feel amazing, but I think a key thing too in Florida is this humidity because a low temperature like that at 64 with a really high dew point, like, there's gonna be things growing in that moisture in Florida too is one of the challenges.
Right. And they do make dehumidifiers. So fortunately, we don't have to deal with this for very long
Mhm.
in our area. But when the temperature is changing outside, and for our Floridian friends, you don't necessarily want to set your thermostat to have the heat kick in when it gets to 72, 74 degrees.
Mhm.
Number one, you don't need it to be the same temperature, and maybe this is really an opportunity for you to experience some of this good sleep.
Mhm. I love
So
it, yes. Yeah, yeah, I
that's
agree.
it. That's kind of the answer when somebody says, I'm not really sleeping well or I'm waking up. So just take your thermostat if you can and take it a degree or two lower than where you have it now.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean that you're going to be 64, but
Mhm.
you have to find what that is. And it's actually quite a bit cooler than you would think.
Right. I mean, this kinda reminds me, and I know, Michelle, you and I both have kind of been, like, in hospital types of settings, but those hospital blankets, they actually work kinda really well from a sleep perspective, even though they're not like the
They're
highest end.
scratchy and
Right.
yeah.
But they're woven in this way that does allow, like, transfer of temperature to kind of to work. So
And to that point, when in the hospital, it's one is not enough, you can always add more rather
Mhm.
than having something that's way too heavy and that you don't use at all, or then you have to use multiple sheets.
Right.
So we were talking about a product that we haven't like bought to try out yet, but this bed jet.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
also one called a chili pad that
Uh-huh.
looks also quite amazing,
Mhm.
but is outside of my budget.
And there's sleep mate too, that's a whole other system. They have pros and cons.
Yeah. But they're capitalizing on some of this issue. I would just say is if you can really work on the things that you're controlling, in this podcast in particular, again, we're not the fancy podcast. We're not really trying to sell you anything.
Right.
What I would say is we are trying to teach you to how to use your brain and your body and like things that you have naturally so that you can sleep better. So the breathing techniques, the exercise, the shower that you were going to take anyway,
Mhm.
it's just a different idea rather than like showering and then drying off really quick and putting that hot robe on.
Mhm.
One of the things is just cooling your body down. Again, the breath work, natural type of sheets, or if you have a whole bunch of different groups of things, have the layers on your bed so you can kind of free the layers as opposed to getting, the flannel sheets in Florida or,
Right.
the electric blanket. If you do use an electric blanket, again, you really want to just use it for a very, very short period of time. Even maybe only have it on when you're not in bed and then have it turned off.
Right. I mean, I think too, like this is one of those pieces, where, and one of these days, I know we've had this conversation. We should go take a field trip to different stores, but I feel like a bedding, like sheets and blanket company store we should actually go to, because I can tell you there's too many things on most of these beds. Like there's these fluffy, you know, really thick comforters, these, duvets, and they're beautiful. They feel amazing. But what I'm hearing you say is that's not gonna be the most compatible to helping your body when it's shifting its own temperature, which it does as you're sleeping.
Right.
Mhm.
But it does make for a good display. So
It
maybe it
does.
sells more stuff. Anyway, I really want you guys to try this at home. I want you to try and see what works the best for you. Write to us. We're happy to hear your comments. The other thing is, we noticed that if you're watching on YouTube, just hit subscribe if you want us
Yes.
to know
Smash
where
the
you're
like
at,
button.
because
Thumbs up.
we have people listening and they're viewing, but they're not subscribing to us, and so we want to know how we can serve you better.
Absolutely. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on the podcast app, wherever you listen to us, and leave us a comment.
Give us some ideas for 2026. It's right around the corner.
It is. All right. Until next time, Sleep Nation.
All right,
All
bye.
right.